As many of you know, Sage 300 has been around for a long time. We're very focused across more of the core accounting aspects and less on the verticals. We rely heavily on our ISV communities to support any vertical market requirements. We just released the 2019.0 at the end of August, and the 2019.1 we released in December in North America and usually rolled out about a month later in Australia, so it'll probably be about January timeframe. The key facts for Sage 300 is that we are supporting businesses around the world, whether individually or also with subsidiaries around the world. In regards to product modernization, when we talk about Sage 300 or a lot of the desktop products in the Sage portfolio, there's several aspects that we look at for modernization as product managers. So one is just your user experience using the product, especially around the ease of doing the upgrades, data security, etc. For a number of years now, the R&D team has been very focused on when we're adding functionality to Sage 300, it's done in a manner that it doesn't break any custom reports, etc., or ISV products that are integrating into Sage 300. And makes it a lot easier process for doing those upgrades to the latest versions. We're also very focused on cloud-connected apps as well as our own cloud connectivity. So of course, with Sage 300 Cloud, we have our web screens that allows a vast majority of the functionality of Sage 300 to be done through a browser-based product. And just continue to sort of focus on the cloud connectivity that we'll get to in a bit, such as e-commerce or the Office 365 apps that we're coming out with in Sage. And again, those are in the roadmap. We'll get to those momentarily. We also look for how we can actually increase our ecosystem of third-party products. So for Sage 300, we're actually attracting some new ISV interest in regards to our web API. When you start looking at some of the new web-based products in market, they're not used to developing to our desktop products. They are web-based, and they're looking for those web APIs to integrate to. So again, with the Sage 300 Cloud, with a web API, it actually provides an opportunity to attract new apps and new third-party applications to be integrated into Sage 300. So if we have a look at what we did with Sage 300 in the last 12 months, this is basically going back to the launch of Sage 300's 2018.0. There wasn't a lot of functionality in the 2018.0 release itself. A lot of it was around the UI. And for some of our existing customers, they questioned why we're doing the changes for the existing UI. And it's sort of twofold. One is it empowers our business partners when they're going to new prospects to be able to have a product that looks modern, shows investment from the company, and can stand its ground as far as, yes, there's investment in a product and it's new. But it also provides better user interface and better user interactions for yourselves. So when you're having new employees come in, it's can be more intuitive looking, etc. And the tool set that we're now using can provide some enhancements that way. So again, these are just some screenshots of the 2018 if you haven't seen it already. So relatively clean and flat looking. With 2018.1, which came out last December, we did a number of enhancements for the desktop and web screens, just a number of pain points. So when we introduced the ability to email through SMTP servers, some of the feedback came back that the customers would like to be able to also use a blind carbon copy to always have copies sent to the warehousing or to accounts receivables or payables, etc. So that functionality was added for both the desktop and web screens to be able to use the blind carbon copy fields for the SMTP servers. And then we also improved the way the taxes were being reported. Previously, this was tied down by just the periods, and it came back that a number of different regions needed the ability to do this actually by date range. So the tax reporting itself was updated to do by date range, and the clearing of the taxes was actually updated as well to do by date range. And then one of the requests that came through actually from a partner was dealing with a large customer where every company was actually set up as a customer, requested the ability that only the companies for which a user has been set up to access would be visible when they go and log in. So we did an improvement there. So when I'm logging as Alister Ellis, I'm only going to see the companies for which I've have user rights set up for in that instance of Sage 300. So if there's 10 companies, I've only been given access to 3. I'll only see the 3 companies in my dropdown. And then one of the other improvements was just be able to see when you last did your day-end processing. It sounds a trivial thing, but I'm sure a lot of you can be familiar with the fact of, well, when was it last done, and be able to quickly see and run that appropriately. For those of you that are using the web screens, we also did a number of improvements for the web screen specifically. The first one was that based on user feedback, we actually addressed a lot of the navigation usability issues. So instead of the menus running along the top, it actually meant as a vertical menu along the left-hand side, improve the toolbars, just make it sort of an easier to use functionality. The menu itself can be collapsed and expanded, so it doesn't take up as much real estate on the screen. And then also for when you're exporting data from the web screens, previously it wasn't taking into consideration any of the filtering that had occurred on that web screen. So if you had done filtering on the customer list and you want to export, actually it would export the full customer list. So we added the ability for the export to take into account the filter and not include the excluded data. And if you're using the custom forms previously, there was an issue with the order entry and the purchase order and the inventory control modules, that they were not allowing the use of the custom forms. It only allowed the usage of the default 2 forms. So that was also addressed back in December. So if that was something that you've been asking for, again, December of last year, we corrected that issue. And then this might not be as common in your region, but there's several regions that the users might be using different languages. And previously that was being set off of the browser language. And the challenge with that is that the browser set language is not always reflective of the user's language. And so with the December update, we went through and we changed that to be reflective of a user setup setting, so that it ignored the browser language and just uses the user setup. And that brings us to the Sage 300 roadmap for the release that just went out, and then also the next sort of 12 months. So we'll go through and we'll talk about the different features coming through here. So the first one to make note of is the for regulatory reporting, we've actually created a Australia GST reporting module. So previously this was using macros, and so this is actually now a tax module that ships with the Sage 300 2019.0. And it takes into account the different aspects of completing the taxes. So it allows the completion of the sales 1, sales 2, purchase 1, purchase 2 requirements, as well as the withholdings, and then as well as the summary. The information here is collected by the setup about what gets accumulated into each of the different buckets. So for instance, you can sit there, I want to say, well, I want to set for what goes into my G1 total sales, what accounts are reflected in the total sales bucket, and it'll let you go through and select the different accounts to make up the total sales. Then of course you can go and export the tax module, the CSV file, or print out the form. Now, one of the larger initiatives that we did for our 2019.0 launch is actually around Sage CRM. For those of you that are using Sage CRM, we are now integrating with the Sage 300C web screens, the Sage 300 Cloud web screens, and we're no longer using the Sage 300 portal, also known as the Orion portal, and we're no longer using the ACPAC web deployment screens. If you weren't aware previously, the portal and the web screens would actually have to be deployed on a different server than the Sage 300 Cloud web screens. There'd be a conflict. So that goes away. The Sage 300 portal and ACPAC web deployment screens were using older technology. They required the use of older versions of IE. And so by eliminating the dependency on those two pieces of technology and using the Sage 300C web screens, it's a much more improved environment. So you can use any browser. So you can use Safari, you can use Chrome, etc. When you're using the Sage CRM. And it is accessing the web screens directly from 300. So if we go through and we look about a bit of the enhancements from an integration perspective, one is just the inquiries themselves. We've improved the way the inquiries are done and integrating directly into the 300 queries themselves. These columns can be sorted, they can be filtered to pull down to just the invoices that you're trying to find. Once you have the invoices, it's actually easy just to click on the order number and call it up so you can have a review of the order. And these are all the 300 web screens that we're seeing. So the nice thing here is that any customizations that have been done on the web screens will flow through into the CRM as well. We're looking about the quote to orders, again, through the filtering and sorting, you can get down to the quotes that you want to pull into an order, and you pull those right into the order entry. And you can go through and do the shipments from here, etc. So it's, again, very intuitive for anybody that's been using our Sage 300 Cloud web screens. They're literally embedded in the CRM. So there's the ship web screens, create invoice web screens. And then just the summary. So you can see the document numbers there, the associated quotes are there. And again, when it's in blue, they're clickable fields, and it'll pull you right into those documents. As far as the administration aspect goes, especially looking at the security, there is the user level security that you can set up. So with all your different users, when you go to set security levels, it's using the Sage 300 security, as well as be able to filter through on the different aspects from within CRM. And same for the database level security. So you can set what databases specifically the customer, the user has access to. For those of you that are interested, there was a change in technologies. Previously, the integration was fairly standalone, set apart. We had the Sage 300 portal and the AppPack web deployment screens, which were separate from the Sage 300 desktop screens. The Sage 300 integration to CRM was done through different APIs. So we're now using the Sage CRM web services directly. It's direct access to the web screens, so it's not going through the web deployment screens and then into the Sage 300. So just an overall improvement in how it's going through. For those of you that are familiar with logins with the Sage CRM, it actually does a secure proxy login, and that's why, again, just improved and tighter integration and how the 300 is being embedded inside the Sage CRM. And customizations alone are just a lot easier. So some of the list and things are now easily customizable. There's no coding required, so you're able to add additional connection points. For instance, if you want to be able to have the ability to create an invoice, you can add that functionality easily in there, and the customization of the listings as well. So overall, a dramatic improvement in the integration aspect. Now, some of you might be familiar with the ad hoc query screens that we used to have, or well, we still have in the Sage 300 portal. Not all the customers were taking advantage of this, probably because not a lot of the customers were going directly into the Sage 300 portal, but we still want to provide the same functionality inside the web screens. So we have added the ad hoc query screens into the web screens. And what this allows is the ability to select some predefined queries that are done, and you can sort, you can filter, and you can group by different columns and get some detailed information. It might be that you're looking up a specific transaction or a specific record, or you just want to get an overview of what's going on with a vendor or a customer. So we actually have default queries for most of the modules. There's anywhere from 1 to 3 to 4 different default queries. You can modify these queries. You can save these queries as templates. You can export the findings. So once you drill down and do your grouping and everything, if it's a report that you actually want to save and send to somebody or save and manipulate further, you are able to export it to Excel. So there's a lot of functionality in here. The queries you create, you can be just for yourself. You can choose to share it with other users as well. So just basically a very easy and light ad hoc reporting tool that is available within the web screens. Something else that we did add for the 2019 release is global search. This is something that has been asked by a number of customers for, and this is the ability to be able to go in and, based on specific information, find the associated records or transactions, documents associated with what you're searching for. So it could be I'm looking for black. If I type in black and I do a search across, I might find Ronald Black. I might find items, black lampshades. I might find transactions with Ronald Black or black lampshades in it, etc. And you are able to filter down by transaction type, filter down by record type, and then once you get down to the sort of minimalized list of possible options of what you're searching for, you are able to click right through into these. So for instance, I can click on the receipt number or the invoice number here, and it's going to call up that transaction for me to review and look at. So again, relatively a nice, quick, easy way to get to information that you're looking for when you might not have the usual information that you can look up by. Now again, as I mentioned before, the Sage 300 portal and the AppPack web deployment screens have been end of life. They're not going to be used in the Sage 300 2019 and forward with the Sage CRM integration. They are still going to be supported for the Sage 300 2018 with the Sage CRM 2018 R3 release. And that'll be the last release that will be using the Sage 300 portal and AppPack web deployment screens. That'll be the last update for those. And the reason is that we just want to be focusing on investing our R&D resources and dollars in the new integration and not worry about maintaining and updating anything with the Sage 300 portal or the AppPack web deployment screens. Now, some of you may have known, depending if you're listening to the newswires, that we did launch the Sage 300 Online with what we call CIOS on Azure. So the CIOS is basically a front-end system that Sage has written, and it's used by a number of our mid-market products globally. And it's it's basically the Sage Enterprise Online Services is what it was formerly known as. And so it basically helps us manage the tenant of Sage 300 Online on Azure. And if you're not familiar with Azure, that is the Microsoft online hosting environment. So the Sage 300 Online is hosted on Microsoft Azure. The default 300 is including all the different modules of 300. We include Sage Intelligence, it's multi-company. We include the intercompany transfers, GL consolidations. There's only a select number of ISVs though, and I'll get to that in a moment. It provides the usual backup restore functionality. We're going to be looking at having a trial so that a partner or customer can easily get a trial going up and review that for 15 days type thing. And then the key aspect here is to understand that this is not fully customizable environment. So for instance, what's not included, you're not allowed to run macros for Sage because this is Sage managed. We view that as a security risk, so we don't allow it. The financial report designer is not usable because it uses macros, so we're using Sage Intelligence instead for the financial report reports. And we can't allow the installation of any ISV just for security reasons. So it's only the pre-selected and pre-installed ISVs that we allow access to. So just know that that's in the marketplace. For yourselves, more than likely you're already well embedded into 300 and things, but just wanted to let you know what we're looking at doing for, again, new customers coming to Sage and the opportunity to do something if they don't need to have a whole slew of ISVs and things, sort of a turnkey up and running environment. So again, we are hosting the desktop screens. I get asked quite frequently why the desktop screens. If you're familiar with the Sage 300 Cloud web screens, currently they don't offer 100% parity. So we felt it'd be detrimental to only offer the web screens and not offer that 100% functionality of 300 where desired. So right now it is hosting the desktop screens. The one thing we do have for this is that you can access it through either remote desktop or you can access it through any browser. So you can use, again, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, Edge, etc. So that's just something new that we put out into the environment that we feel a number of our new customers might opt into, especially if they're not looking to have things on premise. So Office 365 contacts. This is something that we're planning for our December release. And what we have for the Office 365 contacts is the ability to get some customer information within Outlook. So it's sort of a mini CRM. So if you're in Outlook with Office 365, you have an email or you're looking at a contact that is a customer in Sage 300, there's going to be a little Sage app that you can click on within Outlook, and it'll call up a pane right beside the email or the customer contact. And this can provide information such as the customer's credit limit, outstanding balance, the past invoices and payments from that customer, any files shared with the customer, past communications with the customer, any notes or comments on file for that customer. And so the concept here is, again, sort of like mini CRM, get some pertinent details that someone in the field might need without having them calling into the office to get it or bugging somebody in the accounts department to find that information out for them. It's something that's readily available at their fingertips through Outlook. Another thing we're actually introducing for different regions and industries is the ability to withhold sales taxes on purchases. So this is, instead of paying the taxes directly to the supplier, some tax authorities in different regions or industries are requiring the customer to pay those taxes directly to the tax authority when they remit their taxes and not pay the taxes to the supplier. So this is something that'll be introduced in the December release. Another aspect that we will be doing for the December release will be updating the Australia tax module so it's accessible through the web screens. So for those of you that are using the web screens functionality and are doing the GST remittances, that functionality will be available in the web screens with the December update. Now this is something new. If you have been following the Sage 300 web screen development, when I came on board 2 years ago, the project and job costing web screens were not even on the drawing board for our Sage 300 Cloud web screen initiatives. We had a lot of discussions with partners and customers across all the different regions and revisited the reason why it wasn't part of the original scope and how did it fall off. Basically what the initial thought was that they're going to actually redevelop a new job costing module. It's going to be shared across different platforms, different Sage mid-market products. That fell to the wayside, and the decision about PJC was never revisited. So we did revisit it, and we have decided that we're going to be keeping PJC, and we're going to be investing time in PJC. So the initial PJC web screens will be coming in April. And as you can see, that's going to be the order entry, the purchase orders, and the AR web screens, as well as all the embedded PJC transaction and periodic processing web screens. So these are things like your PJC time cards, material usage, etc. will all be available as of April. And then we also have our Sage payments and e-invoicing currently scheduled for April. So with this here, this is the ability for for yourselves to actually email an invoice to a customer and have that customer pay online and have that reflected back into Sage 300 that payment's gone through. So ideally, this customer, your customer, would be able to sit there and look at sort of through a portal, what are the invoices they have outstanding with you, when do they do? They can make partial payments, they can make full payments, they can pay multiple invoices at once, they can pay and take advantage of early payment discounts if those are being offered. Yourself, you would have the option to stipulate whether they're going to be paid via credit card or EFT, one or the other. So for instance, if it's a $10,000 invoice, you might not want it being paid by credit card and just offer the EFT option. If it's a $100 invoice, you can offer up both. So that sort of functionality would be in the Sage Payments e-invoicing. I will say that right now that's a bit tentative at the moment, just for the functionality. The Sage Payments Cloud team, where they'll be on delivering that, and also some of the priorities that are coming up around the web development from other ISVs. So we're in debates whether we do the Sage Payments e-invoicing for April or hold off and do things like the improved web SDK for our ISV partners. We're also looking at addressing the adjustments of the AR and AP invoices and how taxes are supposed to be adjusted and reflected through onto the tax reports. Right now, there's a lot of manual work to get that done. So that is something we're looking at right now for the April timeframe, is addressing that. Then in August, we're looking at wrapping up the remainder of the PJC transaction screens and also the reporting web screens. So the two outstanding PJC transaction screens would be the accounts payable and inventory control transaction screens, and again, the reporting web screens. So most of the functionality for PJC will be delivered by the August timeframe. One of the things we are looking at as well, not so much impacting Australia, but definitely something advantageous for regions like Asia and Middle East, etc., is properly supporting unique character. And in here right now, we're using double byte character support for our Asian languages. Microsoft is deprecating that support. And so to say current in those regions, we're looking at doing the Unicode character support, which is more than just a database change. There's actually coding changes that we need to do to properly support that throughout the product. It has to be done on what we call a .0 release, so it has to be done for the 2020.0 release. It can't be in 2020.1, just because the amount of changes that have to be done for that. But that is something, again, we're looking at for the August timeframe. And then one thing is we're trying to figure out to be more competitive in the market is should we be looking at named user licensing or not. So this is around the realms of right now we have our LAN packs and it's a set price for every user, but it might be that those users don't necessarily do the same tasks when they're in the product. And so if you look at some of the trends now, it's going through, well, this is just a reporting user, so they shouldn't be paying as much as a transactional-based user. And so that's something we're exploring. It's something that we'll be discussing with all the different regions and our partner advisory councils throughout sort of the next 3 to 4 months to see, is that a direction we should be going in? So I've allocated time to visit that just based on some of the partner customer feedback about what the trends are and how we should be following suit and doing a different pricing on users. So again, for 300, we talked about some different deployments and things. So the clear thing I think for yourselves to know is Sage 300 itself is the same product across all these different deployment options, really. So we have the Sage 300 Cloud, which is your on-premise. It is subscription. That's where you get all the web functionality, the web connectivity. Then you have the Sage 300 Online, which is hosted by Sage. It is subscription, but there's going to be limited connectivity, limited ISVs that can be used, etc. So it might be a fit for some customers, but not all, and we're aware of that. It's for a number of customers that just want the turnkey. And we've had sort of proven success with this in North America and even with these types of products in Europe and the UK. Then, of course, we still have our Sage 300, which is our on-premise solutions and is perpetual license. So those are the three sort of deployment options for Sage 300. One of the questions that I do get asked, and I'll address it right now, is what about a fully hosted solution? And so we are going to be looking at doing what we call proof of concept, probably in the October timeframe, because we're already in September, so in October timeframe, where we're going to look at having a fully partner customer managed tenant on Azure, and we'll just be able to provide sort of the default templates within the Azure environment, so it's easy to install Sage 300 in that environment and get up and going. But you'd have the freedom to install any ISV alongside it, and do whatever security settings you're comfortable with. So it might be that you want to be able to use macros, etc. So we are exploring that as an option and doing that proof of concept in October. So as far as the communications to partners, we'll probably be able to provide an update end of October, November about how that proof of concept is going and when we'd be looking at rolling that out into the different regions. So sort of just wrap up, for modernization, when we talk about the cloud enablement, the cloud connectivity, we have the Sage 300 cloud web screens, which is very fortunate for us. A lot of the products don't have that ability to do both desktop and web at the same time. We're doing things like, again, we added in the global search. We're looking at process flows, something through the Office 365. They have workflows and things. So we're seeing if we can use that in our mid-market space. We're leveraging what's going on with the Office 365 apps. Bots, I don't have it up on the roadmap I showed you, but that was scheduled currently for the December 2019 timeframe. We're also looking at what you can do with receipt captures. Customer for life, we've talked a bit about that, about making it easy for the upgrades, etc. And then One Sage is something you'll hear talked about quite commonly. And this is, again, build once and reuse across the business. So Sage Contacts is a classic example. It was built once, and it's been used across all the Sage desktop products to provide that functionality inside Office 365 Outlook. Same with Sage Banking and Payments Cloud. It's being built once to do those integrations with the payment vendors and with the banks, and it's being able to be leveraged by all the desktop products.